Hello everyone and welcome to this session today on enriching SharePoint image libraries using Azure Cognitive Services. My name is Simon Waite and they're my contact details there on the screen. In this session what we're going to do is we're going to take an existing SharePoint document library into which we upload images, in this case of aircraft, and we're going to connect that to an Azure Logic app using the SharePoint connector. Once an image is uploaded into SharePoint, the Logic app will be triggered, the image data will be loaded into the Logic app, and the Logic app will then leverage two Azure Cognitive Services APIs to perform some analytics on the image and provide us some extra context. The first API we'll use is the Custom Vision API. This is a custom classifier that I've pre-built that's built to recognize one of two different aircraft types, and will return tags based on the image that's sent to it if it recognizes what the contents, or it thinks it recognizes what the contents of the image is. The second Azure Cognitive Services API that we're going to leverage is computer vision. So there's no training to be done with computer vision. It's already built to do certain tasks for us. In this case, we're going to extract a caption that describes what the image contains or is, based on what the computer vision model believes it's looking at. And then also to do optical character recognition, or OCR, where we extract any text that can be found in the image that's sent to the computer vision API. Once we've got this data back in the Logic app, we'll then populate that information back into the SharePoint document library next to the image that was originally uploaded, adding value to the document library and making the image hopefully easier to find in amongst other data loaded into SharePoint. If you haven't used Azure Cognitive Services before, it offers a range of different capabilities. Today, however, we're just going to concentrate on the vision area of cognitive services. There are a bunch of other services, but we won't go into those today. And then specifically within the vision APIs, we're going to look at computer vision, which is a pre-built model where it will be able to extract meaning from the images that are sent to it, and custom vision, which is a form of custom classifier where you have to do some training of the model so it is able to recognize specific images from specific domains that you've taught it how to recognize. Alright, we're going to start our demo here just by quickly looking at SharePoint. I have a pre-built document library here. You'll notice that it has some additional columns that you normally wouldn't see in a standard out-of-the-box document library. So specifically, we have the meta tags column and the OCR text column, which we'll leverage as part of our demo. And then I've chosen to show the title column as well, which we normally wouldn't see. Just to show you there's no magic attached to this document library at the moment, I'm just going to take an existing image that I've got of an aircraft, and I'm just going to copy it up into the document library here. And we'll see that once this document uploads that nothing magical will happen at this point. So there's our new image. Fantastically, it's now completely undiscoverable because it has a really convoluted long file name and no additional information about it. So yes, we could potentially go and have a look at the info pane and we'll see that the image is rendered, but actually we have no additional searchable properties here that we can use maybe beyond the file type, which in this case is a JPEG. So let's go ahead and enhance this document library so it's actually got some value for us. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this file so that I've got an empty document library. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut over to my Azure tenant here. Now, I've already set up in this resource group two Cognitive Services API endpoints here. So I have my computer vision server set up here, the 0365 image OCR named Cognitive Services instance. You'll see that it's located in Australia East. All these services are available in Australia. And then I have my custom vision set up. So this is the one where I've had to train the classifier to understand how it should treat images when they're sent to it. Now at the moment it's showing up here as being in South Central US. This is because the current connector for this particular service for Logic Apps is hard-coded to use South Central US. You can't configure it to talk to another region. Hopefully in the future release that will change. When you set up a custom vision service, you get the ability to create what are known as projects. Now that happens at a separate portal at the moment at customvision.ai. Once you've logged in and you make sure you're in the right tenant, you can then go ahead and set up projects. So it's quite simple. You just click new project and off you go. Follow the fairly simple steps to train the model. I have a pre-built classification, a custom vision set up here, so we'll just take a quick look at this. So I uploaded 59 images of a Boeing 747 in various different configurations, and then I did the same with A380s, and when I uploaded them I tagged them, so I can filter by tags. So we should see that that just shows 747s, and if we look at A380s we should also see that that just shows A380s. Now they do look very similar to the eye unless you're paying close attention, so it will be interesting to see how this model goes. Once I uploaded the images, I then did some training. I clicked on the train button up here in the top right hand corner, and out of that I got some guidance from the service telling me how accurate it thinks it will be when images are sent to it. So it's only at about 70% accuracy and recall at the moment, which is not fantastic, but for the purpose of this demo it will do. All I will point out on this screen is you'll notice that we have over here on the left where it says iteration 6, next to it there's a nice button that says default, or a bit of text that says default. This is important because when you call the prediction API endpoint, unless you specify an iteration, it assumes you want to use the default. So if you want to make your API calls as simple as possible, then you can mark the iteration you want to use for your calls as the default, and then you don't have to specify the iteration. The beauty of this approach is that if over time your model changes and you want to go back and use an older iteration, or in a new release you want to use a newer iteration, then you can refer to the iteration explicitly by name. What we need to do for this particular service is we'll need some API configuration information so we can configure our connector. So the two things we'll need is we'll need project ID, which is this nice GUID here over on the left under project settings, and then under accounts on the right we'll need the prediction key, which isn't a GUID but is a nice long random string, which I don't know about you, I couldn't remember that, but they're the two bits of information that we'll need for later. So we'll just take a copy of those and then we'll come back and put them into the Logic app when we need them. Okay, now we have the configuration information we need for the custom vision endpoint. What we'll need to do is just come back over to our Azure portal here, and then we'll need to grab the API key for our computer vision endpoint. So we can do that quickly by clicking on keys here. We'll get access to 2 keys, so we're just going to take a copy of that because we'll need that later. Put that for safekeeping. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new Azure Logic app. Okay, now we have our Logic app created. We're just going to go ahead and open it. And the first thing that will happen is, because it's a new Logic app, it's going to take us straight to the Logic app designer. In this instance, what we want to do is we want to create a blank Logic app. Don't need to use a pre-built template for us here. Now, if you've used Microsoft Flow before, this should look fairly familiar. The design surface is familiar or similar to Flow. It uses the same designer and underlying components. So if you've built flows before, then Logic apps shouldn't be much of a change for you. So we're going to start by using a Sharepoint trigger. And what we want to do is we want to use, when a file is created, properties only. So we just need this to be when a new file is created in SharePoint Online, and we just want to receive the properties. We don't want the binary data at this point. So in order to be able to use this connector, we need to sign in. And the sign in is built using, or created using, an OAuth grant. It is specific to the user who creates this particular Logic app or the connection into Office 365, and the data as it's updated in SharePoint will be in the context of the user who does this authorization grant. So I'm going to allow this access into Office 365 using my personal credentials. Now, because it's authenticated, it can go off and find the correct site and then document library that I want to use. Now, rather than doing this once every 3 minutes, I want to do this once every 15 seconds, just so we don't have to wait ages for everything to happen. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some variables. So I want to create some variables that allow us to then track certain things throughout the rest of this particular Logic app. Alright, now we have our 4 variables set up, so we can track our tags as extracted from the custom vision model, and then our caption text and our OCR text as well. You'll notice that we had a threshold here set to a float of 0.7. This will allow us to filter out any tags returned from the custom vision API that have less than a 70% confidence value against them, which means that the model isn't really sure that it's really seen what it thinks it's seen based on the data that it was provided with. Now, the first thing we're going to do now that we have our 4 variables defined is we first of all need to actually make sure we get the binary data for the file. So we should be able to do get file content, and then file content will simply be, we'll be able to choose the file ID that came out, so the identifier of the file, and we want to infer the content type, so we're going to rely on the extension of the file as a way to infer the data that we're receiving. So at that point we'll have a local variable that will contain the file information that was the actual file that was created that triggered this Logic app to run in the first place. Now we have that. Now we can actually go off and call our custom vision API. What we're going to do is we're going to predict tags from image rather than from a URL. Because the URL in SharePoint is protected, this call won't work if we just pass a URL in. We'll get an unauthorized call. So what we can do is we can actually provide the binary data which we just downloaded using get file content directly to the API. So let's click that. And at this point we need to provide a connection name. So I'm just going to put demo custom vision API, and now we need the prediction key which we grabbed earlier when we were configuring up this particular service. So we'll paste that key into here. We won't see it. We'll click create, and that dialog will change, and we'll now have to enter project ID which we grabbed earlier. Again, we should see that. So now we want to select the image that we want to analyze. We already have the file content coming out of SharePoint, and it's from the previous step, so we're just going to select file content, and that's all we need to do at this point. Then, because we're going to get back multiple tags, we're going to put a for each loop in here, and because the last step emits an enumerable, Logic Apps already is helping us here by saying, okay, well, you want to select predictions, so we select predictions. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a control statement in here, and we're going to do a condition. So what we want to do is we're going to say if the predictions probability, so this is the particular item, the probability of it is greater than or equal to tag threshold, so it's greater than or equal to 70%. If that's true, what we want to do is we're going to append the string to variables. The variable name we're going to do this with is meta tags, and the value is going to be the prediction tag. And then just so we can track what the rating was, we're going to put a space, a bracket, and then the probability, and then another bracket, and then we're going to hit space on the end because these will be appended as strings while we iterate over each of the tags that are returned. then that's that value. If false, we're not going to do anything, we're just going to let it fall through. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a connection, and we're going to use, this time we're going to use the computer vision API. And what we're going to do is we're going to describe the image content, and we're going to provide the source of the image is going to be the file content here. Now in this case I'm already using an existing connection endpoint that I've previously configured, so all it took was the API key plus the location, so in this case Australia East. We don't need to provide any other parameters to this particular call. So after we've done that, we then want to process the results. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a control block, and I'm going to put in a condition. And what I want to do is I'm going to try, I want to use an expression, so I'm going to say if the length, and the length in this case is of the captions because we get multiple captions back. Okay, and we're going to say if the length of this is greater than or equal to 1, then it means we got a value back. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the variable, and the variable we're going to set is the caption text, and the value we're going to set this to is the first caption. So it could be that there's better captions than the one we choose, but for the purpose of this demo we're going to choose the first caption. Okay, if nothing happens then that value will be left blank. So now we have a caption and we have tags. So the next thing we're going to do is, again, we're going to call computer vision. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to do optical character recognition to text. Again, I choose image content here, I get a new box and I'll choose file content. I'm using the pre-existing connection so I don't have to specify it again. And then the next thing I want here is I'm going to set a variable. I'm going to set my variable, which in this case is OCR text, and the value I'm going to set it to is the detected text as came back from the API call. Right, so at this point we have all the information that we need in the Logic app. The only thing that remains is we need to write this back to SharePoint, so I'm going to choose SharePoint, and what I'm going to do is one of these options will be to update file properties, choose the site name, which it already knows about because I've already loaded it, and the library, and then the ID. So the ID I'm going to use here is from the ID, and then I get to choose additional parameters that I want to populate. So I'm going to populate title, meta tags, and OCR text. I'll get additional items here. So the title, I'm going to put the caption text. For the meta tags, I'm going to put the meta tags. And then for the OCR text, I'm going to do OCR text. There we are. So let's save this. Okay, so that's now saved, which means that it's now ready to run when we drop in images in a document library. So let's go back over to our SharePoint document library. We have the moment of truth. So let's grab our previous image here, drop this into the document library here, and see what happens once it uploads. Okay, so there we have some title text, albeit in a JSON format, so we could fix that just by parsing the result. We have some meta tags. In this case it looks like we only got one back. Select this particular item and have a look at the information that we got back. So a large passenger jet flying through cloudy blue sky with a confidence level of 92%. It looks like it only got back Boeing with a 76% confidence level, and didn't really get Lufthansa, but close enough. Let's try one more image and see how we go. Choose this one here, upload that. So if we look at this one, you can see that this one, the description is a large passenger jet sitting on top of a runway with a 96% confidence level. It says that 78% confidence that it's A380, which in this case it is. And it looks like it's tried to extract the name. It's probably on the tail of the aircraft in this instance. So there we are. We've With a simple change, added additional context to a SharePoint document library. We've built a custom classifier that allows us to identify different types of aircraft. We've allowed the captioning to happen automatically for us. We haven't had to do any training there. And then also we've had OCR text occurring as well. So thank you very much for your time today. My name is Simon Waite, and today we've looked at how you can enrich SharePoint image libraries using Azure Cognitive Services. Hope I see you again soon. Bye for now.